and I go now to Rushanara, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I wanted to pick up on Josh's point first, which is about the scarring effects. Now, although despite the government's interventions on job retention scheme, we're already seeing some groups that have been left behind. So that's the new starters, and there's a big campaign called the New Starter Justice, and there are hundreds of thousands of people who haven't got anything, and the government's response is go on welfare. Now, that's just not good enough. We're already seeing that. The point you made about young people and the 640,000, what do panelists think, starting with Josh, what do panelists think about the need for some sort of young starter program, perhaps, for those, that 1 million or so that's likely to face unemployment, so that they can actually have a decent wage while they go and get training and support, so they're not condemned to being in the not in education, training and so on NEETs category, which is very stigmatizing. Perhaps Josh, you want to start?
Yeah, thanks, Rushanara. I think that's vital. I think we need to be thinking quite big here. I think this is an unemployment crisis on a scale that we haven't seen in our lifetimes. I would be promoting some form of job guarantee scheme actually across the board, across the whole population at this point in time. Obviously, you could try and ensure it focuses on younger people, but I think the emphasis should be more on, if you need a job, you can get a job, or you can get into a training scheme, rather than careful means testing of every single person.
What would it cost? Can I just to interrogate this, what would it cost for the 640,000 that they think Resolution Foundation think might be, in total it could be 1 million young unemployed, if there was some sort of intermediate labour market arrangement where they got paid a wage and supported through into meaningful work, and in the meantime had training? Do you know what that could cost the government?
It would. I haven't done any estimates on that figure. It would cost a hell of a lot. But I think it's very important here we take a bit of the emphasis off the cost and the debt, because we're in a situation here where we are looking at what's called a balance sheet recession, where the private sector's deleveraging, households the private sector's borrowing to stay afloat, that households are deleveraging. There's been a massive collapse and massive deleveraging if you look at the latest Bank of England figures. And there's no export demand because, as we've talked about, trade is collapsing. There's only one player left, right, when those three sectors are contracting, and that's the states, that's the government. So and when the government deficit spends, that's someone else's income. Let's not forget that, right? So government debt is not the same as household debt, and it shouldn't be described in that way. And as I've talked about already, the Bank of England's made it clear there's no limits to its financing of government spending. So I don't think we should have too much emphasis on that.
All right. Okay.
And the final point just to make on that is it will be much more expensive anyway if we leave those 640,000 young people without a job for however many years.
So I'm going to ask, if it's okay, I would be grateful if you could come back to me, you and other panelists, with some numbers on costs and benefits, or I won't call it costs, but investment and benefits, if we just focused on that 1 million and the kind of implications if we didn't act. The next question is really about the wider economic recovery and shape of recovery. And I wonder if each of you could just tell me what you think the shape of recovery could be. Is it a V-shaped recovery, U-shaped recovery, L-shaped, or W or some other shape recovery? Or are we going to be perpetually condemned into sustained depression? And if you could all keep your answers brief, please. In one letter, perhaps. Who wants to start?
I've just been unmuted, so if I go then, I don't think it will be a rapid V-shaped recovery at all, because of the reasons I've already mentioned, and the fact that it's pretty clear that the lockdown and the uncertainty about the future will go on for quite some time. If I could just say on the other question that you just talked about, liberating the apprenticeship levy might be a useful thing to do, to allow it to be given to individuals to spend on training. At the moment, the bureaucracy behind the apprenticeship level is extraordinary.
Yeah, good point. So which shape? So you're not. It's not a V shape for you. Which shape is it, or would you rather not say?
It's sort of
L shape.
crawling back at 45 degrees, but taking maybe quite a long time to reach where we would have been had the virus never happened.
Okay, thank you. I noticed. Who's next? Who wants to come in?
I just got unmuted. I'm actually very similar to Philip. I've been speaking about what I call a reverse check mark, down incredibly quickly, back up at maybe less than half the slope you went down, but that's still pretty steep back up. And if you want to get cute, bending off at the top, depending how many sectors have permanent damage, how far back you get.
Jagdeep, did you want to come in?
To wait for I'm unmuted. Thank you very much. Drawing one line suggests that you think that one path is going to happen. That's really not what we're talking about here. Everyone's talking about this afternoon is this unprecedented event and the fact that it's thrown open so many uncertainties. So what you've really got to think in terms of is a large number of possible scenarios. There is a central case, a reassuring case that Adam and Philip have outlined, but I don't think you should plan around that. There's enormous downside risk to that. That means we may end up in a world in which the economy doesn't recover as quickly as anyone anticipates.
Yeah. But
the way you avoid that is more active fiscal policy. I'm happy to talk about that later on. I won't take any more of your time here, but there is scope and scale for more active fiscal policy to offset some of those risks. And
can you just list a few?
Yeah, well, we've talked about job retention schemes or new starter schemes, basic training, job support or job guarantees, bringing forward of investments such as the list that we have from the National Infrastructure Commission, making them bite-sized and shovel-ready, deciding what could be done when lockdowns get eased quickly in certain areas, ensuring that regional authorities and granular levels of investment can be undertaken. So can we look across our regional authorities and say, look, what could you do in July, in the second half of July, if the lockdown was eased? That's the level of planning that we need. And all those things are feasible and possible and affordable. But I'll come back a little bit later on, if I might, to the Bank of England question.
Would you say that actually the thing that's missing here, although obviously it's unprecedented challenges and the government's done a reasonably good job of trying to respond to some of it, but they're leaving out large numbers such as the new starters. And what we now need, now that we've got a better sense of what's going on, is more strategy and more kind of longer term, as you mentioned earlier, so that we're not having to constantly sort of chase to keep, to fill gaps and fill these imbalances that are already showing up between some groups getting help and others not.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good point, and it's one that we've talked about before, in the sense in which we've had a little bit uncertainty as to when there will be fiscal events. We've had this emergency budget, we had the budget in March. As you say, we've learned a lot about an incredibly uncertain situation, but we have learned a lot. And I think there is definitely a scope for some summer reassessment of some of the expenditure plans that we've got in place in light of what we've learned, that would project longer into the future and, where possible, try to offset some of the uncertainty that many people are facing. I would very much back such an event if possible.
Thank you. I'm going to come on to Karen and ask you the same question about what you think the shape of recovery might look like, particularly given your background. But also, how do you see who are going to be the winners and losers in our society? I mean, the banking crisis, and this is not personal, banking crisis, some would argue we ended up balancing the books, or trying to balance the books, off the backs of public sector workers with pay freezes for 10 years. And there's talk of pay freezes now on public sector workers. There are already issues around those who have not benefited, like the job starters and so on. Young people, we don't know what's going to happen because the government hasn't announced anything for the 1 million that's likely to be unemployed. Which other groups, what's the shape of recovery in your view, from your perspective, in your sector's perspective? And which other groups are going to be left behind? And are we going to learn, do you think, any of the lessons from past scarring patterns? Because this is likely to be even bigger, on a bigger scale.
I'm sorry to interject at this point. I need literally a 20-second answer to this question.
Oh, come on, she's going to have a great answer.
That was a very good question for 20 seconds. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
U-shaped. Very clearly, though, there are two assumptions behind that. One is the reopening itself is very gradual, so that's us crawling along the bottom of the U. I think by Q2, we should have faith in our medical profession to deliver us a vaccine to end social distancing. That helps provide the light for the other side of the U. But really critically, the other assumption I'm making is the bridging, the fiscal response, takes us right to the other side of that U. If it's taken off preemptively, then that's going to change the other side. In terms of if that side changes, I think we're looking at, you've identified some of them, job leavers, women, and the lower income deciles, because if we look at the scarring, if we do see it's going to be leisure and hospitality, I don't think they're going to be finding alternative sources of employment very rapidly. So I think that's where the scars will be, unfortunately, if the policy option is not as I think should play out.
Karen, thank you so much.
Brilliant.
And
Thank you very
going
much.
to Alison now, please. Thank you.